Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So on Friday, Hamas fired rockets at Israel in violation of the pause. They also failed to produce the remaining female hostages to trade for more time and prisoners. And so the war is back on. And in response to that, and boy, who could have seen that a terrorist organization responsible for the greatest mass killing of Jews since the Holocaust would act in less than good faith. 105 hostages were freed. 137 remain by last count.
Including Americans, one female that we know of, and then Hirsch Goldberg. He's still being held hostage.
And the response from Mr. 10%, the big guy, via his animatronic Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, is to put Israel on a quote-unquote short leash. The response from the big guy via his Veep is to focus on revitalizing the Palestinian Authority?
Well, as I said, we have to revitalize the Palestinian Authority, which means giving the support that is necessary for good governance. Understanding that on the issues that must be resolved as we think of a plan for the day after, it is about good governance, which will bring transparency and accountability to the people of Gaza and the West Bank. It's also about what we need to do to recognize there must be some plan for security for the region, and I suspect as a plan develops, it will take into account interim and then longer term. And finally, what we must do in terms of rebuilding Gaza.
Boy, this isn't a home makeover show, woman.
So let's just do it all over again, says Kamala. Let's just go back to pre-October 7th and hope it doesn't turn out the same, right? For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Stephen Bucci, who served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. He's a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Steve Bucci, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's always great to be on the show with both of you.
Can you help us decipher what Kamala Harris means by revitalizing the Palestinian Authority?
Well, I'd love to say that I could, and I understand exactly what the vice president's trying to say, but I'm with you guys. I'm scratching my head going, what? She's talking about revitalizing the Palestinian Authority, but the Palestinian Authority, while they're not quite Hamas, they didn't do October 7th, but they've been cheerleading for it ever since. They've expressed nothing, that would really make them a more responsible partner in this process than clearly the Hamas, government there in air quotes, that's in Gaza. So I guess to say, well, let's put the Palestinian Authority in charge of the whole thing, I guess that's better than just giving it back to Hamas to do, but not much.
Well, do we have evidence that the Palestinian Authority was involved in the planning of that terrorist attack? I mean, either with a wink and a nod or willful blindness, which can also implicate culpability, or even more formally?
I have not seen any intel or heard any big reports on that, other than they're cheerleading for it. After the fact, they're shaking their fist and saying, "Go, brothers, we're behind you." But I have not seen any specific intel that they were involved. The Palestinian Authority didn't get along with Hamas very well. They're competitors, and so I don't think that the guys in office were involved with the planning or anything else.
Well,
Could they
yeah,
know about it? Sure, but
yeah. Well, knowledge is makes you an accomplice. I mean, they may be competing for top dog in the region, but they also have a common enemy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I am not waving off and saying they're not without sin. They're, if you're cheerleading for that kind of horrific action, that does not mark you as then a responsible partner for the future.
Right.
So I think what the vice president is saying is lunatic stuff. That is not a plan going forward. That is not something that's going to benefit either the Palestinian people or darn sure not Israel or the region. So I think they're hoping against hope for something like this. So the pressure from the protests and all this other stuff that's going on will come off of them, and all of the Muslim people around America who are saying, "Well, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. He's helping Israel." Well, yeah, presidents are supposed to make decisions. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden, but it's not because he's supporting Israel. It's because he's not supporting Israel strongly enough and condemning Hamas with even more fervency and without this parsing thing that Blinken is leading, that, they're trying to straddle a line and, continue to make this look like Israel is somehow to blame for all this. And if they would just be nicer to the Palestinians, this wouldn't be a problem. That is not the issue. The issue is the Palestinians, not just Hamas, frankly, but many of the Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, have made a conscious decision that their only policy position is to exterminate Israel, period. Anything else falls short of their expectations. And as the leaders of Hamas have stated many times since October 7th, they did this, they're proud of it, and they're going to do it again.
Well, what do we do? I mean, the Houthi rebels launched a drone strike against the U.S. destroyer in the Red Sea, and that's just one of, 65 attacks on military bases. And I know one American contractor was killed. We don't hear about this. It's rarely on the news, if mentioned at all.
Yeah, what happened to our partner in peace in Tehran?
Yeah, right. Tehran, I've had people from the region, other Shia governments, when I was still living in D.C. and meeting with ambassadors on a regular basis, tell us during the first negotiations to make a deal with Iran, saying, why in the world are you trying to negotiate with the Persians? Said, nobody in our region ever negotiates with the Persians because you always lose negotiations with them. They're the most skillful and deceptive negotiators in the entire Middle East, if not the world. They lie regularly. It's part of their modus operandi. We continue, people in the progressive part of our government, continue to think, oh, no, we just talk to them, we can figure this out. They are not partners in anything. They are our adversaries, and they admit it fully. So you're right. They are sponsoring the Houthis. They're sponsoring Hezbollah, Hamas. They're sponsoring the Syrian government. Come on. When are the Biden administration players going to realize we have to take this fight to Iran, at least to their proxies, not just one attack a week or one counterattack a week, but with some force and regularity that makes the price to Iran higher than anything they've seen so far.
Well, what does that look? I mean, other than I know congressional Republicans have moved to freeze the $6 billion that the Biden administration was going to turn over to the Iranians. That's still a drop in the bucket to what we're essentially providing in terms of the financing that comes from the oil exports that are not being properly sanctioned. But what is the play in response to this provocation, both to the United States and to commercial shipping, the commercial ships were also attacked in addition to a U.S. warship. So what's the proper response to Iran?
Well, I personally think we should be hitting Iranian targets. I know that's a little much for some people, and I don't think this administration has the stomach for it, but we should at the very least, after those missiles fired by the Houthis, which are totally bought and paid for by Iran, we should be taking out all of those targets in Yemen that the Houthis are using to operate from, and enable the Saudis to help us do it, which they would join in gladly because we're the ones who told them to stop fighting the Houthis before. We should be hitting all those targets around Syria that they have used to hit our people in the area in Syria and Iraq. And we should be looking specifically for targets where we know the IRGC advisory groups, their Spetsnaz equivalent, where they are stationed. So there is Iranian blood spilled, not necessarily in Iran, but in these other areas. If they're going to put their people out there to help enable these attacks by other folks, we should be taking out those other folks and the Iranian advisors that are guiding them.
But that sounds like it's going to lead to the beginning of World War III.
No, it won't.
Okay.
If we attacked Iran directly, you'd have a wider conflict. If we attack those proxy groups, no, it will not be. That would be even considered proportional by people like the UN. If we get attacked 60 times, hitting 1 or 2 or 3 targets is not proportional. That is impotent. And, we could do a lot more than we're doing without coming anywhere close to the kind of threshold of widening the conflict to bring in other nation states against us.
Turning to Eastern Europe, so Ukraine has again restated its position that the war doesn't end until they get all their land back, which I understand. But even I would characterize Richard Haas as, certainly more adventurous with American blood and money than I would be. Even Richard Haas, former head of Council on Foreign Relations, is suggested that it's time for Ukraine to cut a deal and essentially for America to intercede to prompt a deal to be cut. And so I wonder about this, with the passing of Henry Kissinger last week. He changed his position on Ukraine to the extent of NATO admission. And essentially, as I understand Kissinger's position, it was end this war as soon as possible and admit Ukraine to NATO as a deterrent on further Russian aggression. What do you think about what's coming from the foreign policy establishment in the form of both Richard Haas and the recently departed Henry Kissinger?
I agree with Richard, or I disagree with Richard Haas on a lot of things, and it's really kind of daunting for any scholar in the international relations field to disagree with Henry Kissinger on things, even what he's dead. But I'm not sure we're quite ready to do that. I think I'm not sure that Ukraine's ever going to get the entire Crimea back, every bit of its territory back. I don't know. I think that's looking tough for them. But I'm not sure it's quite the time to pull back yet. It might be 6 months from now, it might be a year from now. I'm not really sure. But I think we could continue to support Ukraine for a while longer, because otherwise Putin can spin this, at least in his own troubled head, that he has won, and that could embolden to do more. I'm not sure that admitting Ukraine to NATO right now would have quite the deterrent effect that Dr. Kissinger is indicating, because I'm not sure if we did that and a week later Russia did an offensive, that we would then say, okay, execute Article 5. I just don't think that will is there yet. I think there is still some will to continue to support logistically and materially and let Ukraine keep fighting for themselves. So I think that may be the way we go in the future, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official. He's a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Steve Bucci, thank you as always.
Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Testosterone levels are at an all-time low. Individual T levels decline 1% every year. Chalk, CHOQ, is the new champion of natural testosterone boosters. Chalk's main ingredient is clinically studied to naturally boost testosterone 20% in 90 days. Supercharge your masculinity and boost your daily energy with Chalk's Male Vitality Stack. For a limited time, our listeners will get 30% off at CHOQ.com with promo code USA. CHOQ.com, code USA.
This holiday season, Capital One reminds you to give yourself the gift of 1.5% cash back with the Capital One Quicksilver Card.
Can I earn 1.5% cash back on birds?
Birds?
What if you sent your true love 2 turtle doves plus a partridge in a pear tree?
Sure, but why would anyone want that?
The song was very convincing.
Earn 1.5% cash back on all your holiday purchases with the Capital One Quicksilver Card. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Oh, yeah. Are you a business owner? Or department head already planning for 2024? If you're like most businesses in Chicagoland, you've probably had a challenging year with sustaining revenue, hiring new recruits, and keeping operating costs at bay. Maybe you've had a great year and you want to build the momentum in the months to come.